Imagine America in the 1930s. The stock market crash of 1929 has left millions without work. Families who once had homes and wages now find themselves adrift, facing hunger and uncertainty. Across the country, trains whistle through the night, carrying not just goods, but people, men and women who have left everything behind in search of something better. They are called hobos, and their lives, though harsh, became a story of survival, community, and resilience in the hardest times.
The word hobo was not new, but during the Great Depression, it took on a larger meaning. A hobo was not just a beggar. He was a traveler, someone willing to work for food, to move from town to town in search of opportunity. Many were young men, barely out of school, unable to find jobs in their hometowns. Others were middle-aged fathers, ashamed to be without wages, who left to avoid burdening their families. They carried little more than a bundle, a tin cup, and hope that the next town might be kinder.
The lifeblood of hobo life was the railroad. Freight trains became highways for the jobless. Hobos learned to jump aboard moving cars, slipping into empty boxcars or clinging to ladders. The sound of wheels on steel, the smell of smoke and oil, and the constant sway of the train were part of their existence. It was dangerous. Falls were common, and railroad guards, known as bulls, patrolled fiercely. Yet, without money for tickets, the rails were the only way to cross the vast American landscape.
Along the tracks, near rivers, or in patches of woods, hobos built makeshift camps called jungles. A jungle might be nothing more than a fire pit, a few lean-tos made of scrap wood or canvas, and a pot for stew. But for a weary traveler, it was a home. Around the fire, men shared food, boiled coffee, and traded news. Some taught each other tricks for finding work or the safest towns to pass through. In the jungle, rules emerged. Be respectful, share when you can, and never bring trouble to the camp.
Hobos developed their own secret language, a code of symbols chalked on fences, posts, or walls. A drawing of a cat meant, "A kind-hearted woman lives here." Two interlocked circles warned, "Police are not friendly." A simple triangle suggested a place to sleep in safety. This code allowed hobos to help one another silently, leaving behind knowledge for the next traveler. It was a network of survival, built not by telegraphs or newspapers, but by chalk and memory.
Food was always scarce. Hobos begged for meals, but they also worked odd jobs for farmers, harvesting crops, mending fences, cutting wood. In exchange, they might receive stew, bread, or fresh milk. At jungle camps, meals were often communal. A pot of stew made from whatever scraps could be gathered: potatoes, onions, beans, sometimes a piece of meat if luck was kind. Coffee was treasured, even if thin and bitter. The simple act of eating together, of dipping bread into the same pot, was a comfort greater than the food itself.
Contrary to stereotypes, many hobos sought honest work. They picked fruit in orchards, shoveled coal, or labored on construction crews. The pay was little, sometimes just a few coins or meals, but dignity came with it. Some towns welcomed the extra hands. Others feared outsiders, turning hobos away with suspicion. Still, the willingness to work distinguished hobos from tramps, who avoided labor, and from bums who never left one place. Hobos believed movement itself was survival. Life on the rails was never safe. Falls from trains, maimed or killed. Guards with clubs beat men caught riding. Police arrested vagrants, sending them to chain gangs or overcrowded jails. Weather was another enemy. Winters bit with frost. Summers burned skin dry. Sickness spread easily, with no doctor to call. Many hobos bore scars, not just on their bodies, but in their eyes that had seen too much hunger and too many cold mornings. Despite hardship, hobos formed bonds. Around campfires, they told stories, sang songs, and carved their names into boxcar walls. They shared knowledge, how to spot a friendly farmhouse, how to avoid cruel sheriffs, how to mend torn boots. In these moments, a sense of fraternity grew. They were brothers of the road, bound not by blood, but by common struggle. For many, companionship was as necessary as food, a reminder that even in despair, no man had to face it entirely alone. Hobos passed through countless towns. Some people treated them with kindness, a sandwich from a housewife, odd jobs from a farmer, or just a smile. Others treated them with contempt, fearing theft or disease. Children often stared wide-eyed at the ragged travelers, curious about lives so different from their own. For hobos, each knock on a door was a gamble. Would they find kindness or anger? The generosity of strangers often meant the difference between hunger and survival. Though most hobos were men, women also took to the rails. Some dressed as men for safety, cutting their hair short and wearing trousers. Their reasons were the same: poverty, hunger, escape. For them, the dangers were even greater, but their courage matched. Women hobos were fewer in number, yet their stories of resilience, of disguise, of endurance remind us that the road did not belong to men alone. In the evenings, after long miles of walking or riding, hobos sometimes sang songs of trains, of lost love, of distant homes. A harmonica passed hand to hand, its notes thin but soulful. Stories, too, filled the night. Tales of kind farmers, of dangerous towns, of near escapes. These were not just entertainment, they were survival, a way to keep hope alive,
to remind each other that life, though hard, still had beauty in it. As the 1930s dragged on, the number of hobos swelled. Estimates say more than 1 million men and women rode the rails. Entire boxcars were filled with them. Towns grew weary of their presence, setting up patrols, building jails, passing ordinances against vagrancy. Yet the railroads kept moving, and so did the hobos. With each passing year, their resilience was tested, but still they endured. Because the alternative, staying still with nothing, felt impossible. By the late 1930s, as the New Deal created jobs and World War II loomed, the life of the hobo began to fade. Many found work in factories or in the military. Trains carried fewer desperate riders. The jungles emptied, and the chalk marks on fences faded in the rain. But the memory of the hobos remained, etched into American folklore. The wandering worker, the survivor without a dollar, who lived by grit and the kindness of strangers.
The story of the hobos is not just about hunger or hardship. It is about endurance, adaptation, and dignity in the face of nothing. They proved that even without a dollar, one could still carry courage, still share, still survive. Tonight, as you let this story settle, imagine the whistle of a distant train, fading into night. Picture a fire in a jungle camp, men passing bread hand to hand, and let the rhythm of those wheels, steady and endless, carry you gently into sleep.